So I'm Bob Durden, class of 1980. My mural behind me, kind of smiling, I haven't seen it since I graduated. But I've gone on and worked professionally in the arts for over 20 years. And I'm senior curator at the Yellowstone Art Museum. It was such a great process because I didn't have to jump through any hoops as a student. The choir director at the time was Paul Halpin, Mr. Halpin, and he knew I was very involved as an art student, but I spent a lot of time in choir. I was very devoted to the choir program. And he wanted a mural over the door, so he asked me to design a concept. And we kind of talked about it, and I just thought it'd be appropriate to focus on the choir director's hands, though these are my hands, not Paul's.
Okay.
It's easier for me to model for my own mural.
I'm Kay Kempton Rhoda, and I graduated in 1961. Then I went to Eastern for a year and then up to Montana State in Bozeman. Then I've been in the Northwest, the Midwest, and the Deep South, and finally got back to Montana to retire. We really didn't have a choice because I wanted to paint rim rocks, but there were enough rim rocks, I guess, so they asked us to paint a sporting thing, and since we were girls, Margaret and I decided we needed to do cheerleaders and majorettes and song leaders. Then we had to use donated paint, and so that green was donated, a giant can of paint, so we had to use the green.
Well, my name is Mona Lessman. I'm from Billings, and I graduated in 1960. And at that time, Earl Bailey, the art teacher, was selecting people to do murals. And I don't know if he started that program, but he might well have. And in any case, I was one of the students that was allowed to do a mural. It kind of made art stick for me. And so I've painted ever since. I ended up a product designer in my business life, but went back to painting after a 10-year hiatus in about '73, and have been painting and exhibiting ever since. Well, my second love was geology, and every weekend, my boyfriend at the time and I and his dad and our best friend went fossil hunting, and they are the people in the mural. So that's Bud Feldman, and this was Bob, and that was Orville, and we're out there undigging bones of the animals on both sides of us.
Well, I think it's just a great project. There aren't a lot of schools and school administrations that honor their students in this way. I mean, I think there are murals that go back to 1947 and they're still intact. It's a lot easier just to simply paint over these creations and move on. But even when I was a student in 1980, I really wasn't thinking that this would survive as long as it has. So to come back and see that it's still intact is pretty amazing.
Oh, it's amazing that the ones have been saved, that I see the ones that I remember that were here in 1961.
Because this is part of the history of Billings and part of the history of this school. And it is the history of those of us who are artists in Billings. And so for those reasons, it's really important not to let all of that just be washed away and go away. And so I think the effort being made by this committee and the writing of a book documenting is absolutely marvelous. And part of it is, for me, because I did a mural, but part of it is for all the rest of them, because there's some fine pieces of art on the walls in this school, and I just would hate to see them all gone.
So it's a time capsule, in a sense, of how students were viewing the world. Some of the early murals were based on historical events, but then, I think you get into the 1960s and the murals really reflect the popular culture of the time. Some of the murals are pretty specifically related to the pop culture, and I love that. Mine's a little different because it had a specific kind of attitude to honor the choir program. But, just to be aware of that, the presence of students in the building all of these years. It was a remarkable place to be a student. I'm sure it still is. But thinking about the people that have traveled through these walls, I think is important.